Welcome everybody to Trinity Talks, The Road Less Travelled. My name is Dorothy and I am the series producer with Near FM. I'd like to welcome our audience here in Trinity Longroom Hub and also our audience on Facebook. Over the course of these conversations, we'll meet current and past students from Trinity College Dublin who have taken the road less travelled to education. Men and women from all walks of life who have overcome social, prejudicial and even geographical barriers, all for the opportunity to further their education. At the end of the conversation, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions or make a comment. For our audience joining us on Facebook, we'd be delighted to hear any comments or questions you may have, so please write them into the chat, and we'll bring them in at the end of the conversation. For our audience here in the hub, we ask you to raise your hand and wait until the microphone is with you before asking your question. For this event, I'm excited to introduce Daryl Headley-Rooney, a PhD student in Trinity's Department of History. From Crumlin in Dublin, he's the first of his family to go to university. Daryl did his undergraduate degree in UCD, where he struck an improbable friendship with Dr. Ethna Swan, a retired faculty member and Dominican nun. Ethna has become a mentor for Daryl, and to this day, they have a close relationship. Daryl will be in conversation with Professor Jane Ohlmeyer, Trinity's Erasmus Smith Professor of Modern History and former director of the Trinity Longroom Hub. Jane is also the chair of the Irish Research Council. Enjoy another conversation of The Road Less Travelled, a series close to my heart, having returned to education in a roundabout way myself. That's all from me. Thank you for being here, and I'll pass over to Jane.
Thanks very, very much, and welcome everybody. It's absolutely wonderful to be here today. And Daryl, I can't tell you how much I've been looking forward to this conversation because you and I know each other quite well. But every time I hear your story, I feel really inspired by it. So I'd love to just hear, share that, let you share that with all the amazing people who are listening in. And really just to start at the beginning and tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and where you come from.
Yeah, well, firstly, actually, thanks to obviously everybody here, and thanks to yourself, Jane, for agreeing to interview me, and to everybody near FM for the opportunity. So yeah, as Dorothy said, I'm from Crumlin.
Would you mind just starting off it again?
Yeah.
Problem with the mic.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Here.
Start again, right?
Start again. Just firstly, I'd like to say thanks a million to Jane for the very kind introduction and for agreeing to interview me, and everybody here in the audience, and obviously to everybody near FM for the opportunity. So yeah, just about my background, I'm from Crumlin originally. As you said, first the generation to go to university. I started off in the Marston Plata Road, Crumlin, which was the school my mother went to, and it was a school that was run by nuns, and had a very nice childhood, good rearing, good education, and good teachers. It was a sort of an interesting transition for me was that the school that I was in primary in the Mars was that after first class all the lads were thrown out effectively, and it became an all-girls school from second class onwards. So I ended up changing and going to a school in Templeogue, where I stayed in Mr. Shanahan's in Templeogue, and then went on and did my secondary schooling in Templeogue as well. So I mean, great rearing, like a very close relationship with my grandparents. I was spoiled rotten by then because on my mother's side I was the first grandchild for 7 years, and then on my father's side I was the first grandchild for 6 years. So very close relationship with my grandparents, and they would have imparted, I suppose, some great life lessons. And I suppose looking back now, it's interesting because I wouldn't have said I was ever pushed in a certain direction per se, but I always had that freedom growing up, very loving environment to grow up in, but kind of little things that would have given me sort of a broader awareness of, say, what was going on culturally. Things like, say, my grandfather was a great man. We used to slag him. He said he was the Karl Marx of Crumlin, always a big man for workers' rights, and my father used to have great stories about him being brought to sort of workers' union meetings, and him being called Brother Rooney, and these sort of really interesting things that. And I suppose those stories, hearing about them as a kid, that really sort of intrigued me about the past, and relationship with the past. And I would have heard things about my great-grandfather, who was, before joining the Irish Army, he was a member of the old IRA. He was reared in Scotland, and then he also fought for the British in World War One. So I suppose I was always interested. That's what we're seeing, the dichotomy between the fact that he was in the old IRA, but he also fought for the British. And I suppose it was taboo, as you know, in our society for many years. And I mean, the Remembrance Garden in Chapel Lisle, I think it is. I mean, that was derelict for a long, long time.
Island Bridge.
Island Bridge, rather.
Yeah.
Sorry, with Chapel Lisle. Island Bridge. I mean, that was derelict for a long time, and that's a very complicated sense of the past, and you know, people having these not necessarily multiple identities, but people are multifaceted. I think oftentimes in history, and certainly in the popular sense of history, it's not always given, I think, just emphasis. That idea, that kind of nuance, I suppose, in history.
So what I'm hearing, Daryl, is your passion for history came very, very much from your family, from especially your grandparents, rather than sort of your more formal schooling. Would that be fair? Listen, I'm the daughter of a school teacher, so I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't want to give off the impression that I was a swat in school. I mean, I loved school and I loved education, and I was a bit of a messer, like, you know, most kids are in school, but I was always interested in knowledge and information.
Yeah.
My father was a great man for table quizzes. So I loved sort of it. I mean, I was an off man for Zoom table quizzes during. I was organising them for all my mates.
During COVID.
During COVID, certainly. During COVID, I mean, I was always doing that. But I suppose going back, yeah, it would have been stories. So like even having the memorabilia, we had my grandfather's war medals.
Right.
We had all that sort of thing. And then we had gas masks.
Yeah.
We had an incredible little crucifix that he got when he was fighting in World War One for the British. So I mean, it was just incredible to have these items. And actually at the moment I'm writing this little kind of family history of my great-grandfather. Because those sorts of stories, it is incredible. People forget that, I mean, we have all these stories and people are kind of walking artefacts in a way. But within a generation, if those stories aren't written down or passed on, they're gone.
They're gone.
Within a generation.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important, especially for family history, to have.
And when you hold that crucifix or you hold those medals, how do you feel?
It's hard because you're putting yourself into that person's shoes, and see, especially for people who pass. Like, I'd never met my great grandfather, and I was fortunate enough to actually have met one of my great grandfathers, but I never met him, and I only have the stories that my father had to tell about him, or my grandfather had to tell about him. I mean, he was incredible. I mean, tough man. I mean, he was an army man, but his wife died when my grandfather, I think, was 13 or 14, and he was left to raise, God, I think something, was it 12 kids?
Did he remarry?
You know, he didn't remarry. No.
No.
You know, 12 kids he had, and so it was left out. And actually, but you know, for remember my grandfather, I'm doing this little family history project, and I encourage, if you have the chance to do it, or if you have the time, even with your parents or your grandparents, to record them and do a sort of bit like this, a sort of a Gay Byrne, the meaning of life sort of thing. My grandparents asking about their lives, you know, how they lived, and it's incredible, even the difference within the couples in my grandparents. Like my grandmother would say things like she told us that, you know, she was spoiled rotten as a child. She had a cup of cocoa and rashers every morning for breakfast, whereas my grandfather said he never had any breakfast, didn't have any breakfast, you know. So it's just incredible, and we take so much for granted, I think, now. So I think really having conversations with people, especially of older generations, I mean, it just the sense of resiliency. But I suppose it's instructive. It gives you a sense, like history.
Yeah.
History imbues a philosophy in a sense.
Yeah.
Gives you a sense of the past, but also how we live now and potentially how we live in the future. So I think that's why history is so
I'm
important.
actually listening to you here because obviously I'm a historian, it's been my passion, my profession, but yet I know very little about my own family history. And I think you're right, it's really important to do that, because once a generation passes, that's it. It's lost unless it's written down or passed on down. And I think that having the medals or having artefacts there actually helps, because it captures the memory as well, Daryl, and that's so wonderful. I'm delighted to hear you're doing that. But let me take you back a little bit. So you finished your formal schooling, but you went, why did you decide to go to UCD? Well, obviously that decision to go to university is something that, was that always on the cards, or it was something that you know, you weren't too sure to begin with? Tell us your story of going to university.
So it wasn't, I mean, like I said, I mean, my parents were great and they were always very encouraging, but I mean, they wouldn't necessarily push me to go to third level, but it was more so, and this is something that I think is interesting in the context of education in Ireland and progression to university, and something that may not necessarily be something that is all that talked about. But when I was in school, so, you know, growing up in Dublin 12, say, in Crumlin, and I went to school, Dublin 6W. Now, there was a very interesting study done by the HEA, I think it was in 2014, looking at progression rates by postcode. I think in my area it was something like 34%, 36%, but then Dublin 6W was something like 92%,
Right.
something which is interesting. But, and I've only really become conscious of this now, it didn't occur to me going to school in secondary that I wasn't going to go to third level, because all of my friends and everyone around me
Yeah.
were going to third level, or most of
Yeah.
them were going to third level, say 80% were going on to third level. So it never even crossed my mind that I wasn't going in a way. It was just assumed nearly in a way, because it was just almost like a peer pressure. You were just going to go, and it was only a matter of going, okay, for me, I kind of always had a grand appreciation for teaching and education, so I'd actually want to be a secondary school teacher. That was my plan. And actually, funny enough, before I started the PhD here, I concurrently applied for the doctorate here and a PME in education, and I had the decision to make whether I was going to do secondary school teaching or do the doctorate. And I said, I'll do the doctorate first, and then sure, maybe in the future. But yeah, it was always a sort of it wasn't necessarily in the back of my mind I was going to go on to university.
Right.
I mean, I always found it incredible. A very good friend of mine went to Drimnagh Castle secondary school, and I remember him telling me, and I was doing history for the Leaving Cert, he said, I have a great principal, and his name is Dr. Rain Walsh. And I couldn't understand. I said, what do you mean he's a doctor? Dr. Rain Walsh. I said, he's a medical doctor and he's your principal. He said, no, he's a doctor in history. He's a doctor of history. I didn't know you could do a doctorate in history. I thought, this is bad.
Yeah.
So, and funny enough, it's gas. Now I actually know Dr. Ray Walsh very well. Just how it came about, but that wasn't in my mind. And then obviously there is a sort of a language and a nuance to third level that, unless you're aware of it and you have that, you have to learn it. You what I mean? And you do have to understand the progression routes and what's a master's, what's like my granddad says, and you're going to be a doctor, but it's of history. They say, it's not a medical doctor, so it's.
But your family was supportive, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was no sort of, go out and get a job. But I think my family's great because they keep you grounded. There's no airs and graces. And
you keep us grounded, Darryl.
Yeah, I have to keep you grounded, Jane. So I mean, they've always been so supportive.
Yeah.
I think I'm a bit mad, maybe in some ways. That going. I mean, it is, and as you know, academia, it's a strange sort of beast. Someone. I brought a relation here and they said it's a bit like Hogwarts, isn't it? And the professors and the gowns and it is a sort of it's something I think in some ways that you can come in and you do your undergrad, but if you progress on to say doctorate and get involved in your lecturing, it's another world entirely.
So let me take you back to your undergraduate before we talk about your PhD and your current work, Darryl. It's how did you find that experience of doing history, and why history? What attracted you to a history degree in the first place, and then what has it meant to you?
So the reason I did history was because, I suppose, like I said, to go back, I was going to college. What will I do? My three best subjects were geography, English, and history.
Oh, and all very cognitive disciplines. Yeah, one feeds the other.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so,
bedfellows.
Yeah, exactly. And they're my three best subjects. So I said I'll do those three subjects, which I did. I dropped geography after the minor, and then I pursued English and history. As a joint degree, and that's how.
And is that what attracted you to UCD, that you had that flexibility to do that?
What attracted me there, I'll be very honest, what I did was I did 3 open days, and I went to Maynooth, I went to Trinity, and I went to UCD. I went out to Maynooth on a horrible, dreary day, and Maynooth is a beautiful campus and I appreciate it now. I mean, all those seminarians, what a place to be, back in the 19th century. It was the largest seminary in Europe, but on that cold, dark, dreary day, it wasn't appealing to me, and I said, I can't go. And the other thing, I didn't drive, so from Crumlin to Maynooth, 2 buses, unless I'm out in the M50 with the thumb out trying to get a Jones, out. So I said, no, Maynooth's out. Came into Trinity, had an open day, and very interested in it, and there was the ambassadors, and it was great, but I didn't have the feeling for that undergrad, and so I went to UCD, and I just kind of fell in love with the campus, and it was close by. It was the 17 bus is outside my door, brings me right there. I was going, perfect, what a place. So I mean, I had a brilliant time in UCD, loved UCD. And
UCD loved you. I'm very familiar with some of the people who taught you.
Yeah,
and they still speak very, they obviously, you have a great friendship and a lifelong friendship with many of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a huge ground. I still go out to UCD when I can. And it's it's a special place, you know. It's the first place you go when you do your undergrad. And when I'm out there on campus, it brings me back, kind of, you know what I mean, those days of innocence in a way, you know what I mean. I wish I could go back.
Well, then why Trinity for the PhD?
So Trinity, well, it's the reputation. I mean, I said I have to come to Trinity and have the opportunity to see what Trinity is like.
Right.
Having gone to, you know, the artist formerly known as the Catholic University of Ireland, you know, come to Trinity to see what's like, those two great bastions of Irish third level education.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm very fortunate and I'm glad. It's a very different experience, obviously, coming here as a postgraduate student as opposed to being an undergrad. And I appreciate that, but I mean, how fortunate I am to have the opportunity to go from both UCD to Trinity and have the experience of both.
And tell us a little bit about what your PhD is about.
So my PhD is effectively looking at, I suppose, Anglo-Irish relations in the 12th and 13th century, looking at the Anglo view. Was there an English view of Ireland in the 12th and 13th century? I'd err on saying there wasn't a concrete, homogenous sense. I mean, as you know, there's a nuance to history. And I sound very political, I sound like a politician here, but being maybe a bit on the fence, but you have to remember the sources we have for the past, and this isn't just in the Middle Ages, but they're usually written by a literate elite, and this is the case for the medieval past. I'm looking at Latin writers who are members of a literate elite, and they're all ecclesiastics in some form. They're monks, parsons, deans, deacons, whatever they are. So they're writing from a specific point of view. So, I mean, can you really take their work and say it's representative of an entire group of people? I mean, what does English even mean in that? And that's what I'm problematising. I mean, that came out of, I'll give you a laugh, I was in between, I was deciding, I said, will I go pursue a master's degree, because I just finished my undergrad and I was on holidays, and I stupidly, I'd assumed that this sun cream was, you know, waterproof, whatever else, and no, it didn't. Ruined my eyes. My eyes were in tears. So I had to go back to the apartment or whatever, put a tea bag on my eye and sit there nursing myself, and I was on my phone scrolling through the Indo, and an article came up saying somebody, an academic, a Cambridge academic, has found that St. Patrick wasn't, basically all he was made out to be. In fact, he didn't come here in sort of a civilising mission. He came because he was fleeing the Romans, because he was going to have to become a tax collector.
Yeah.
You know, and I was going, this is bad, you know, and I was reading the comments. And I found it amazing because in the comments somebody wrote, typical, you know, someone in Cambridge is trying to ruin Irish culture and history, but it's changing the story, you know, this sort of thing. And I looked and I saw who it was, and it was written by an academic called Roy Fleckner, who I know very well. He was one of my lecturers in UCD. Yeah. And, you know, I was laughing myself because firstly, they initially assumed that. It's just amazing because it's just these assumptions we have and these biases. And look, I mean, anyone who says they're not biased and prejudiced is a liar. We all have a prejudice and biases. So I was looking at that and I said, God, little did I know, okay, he's affiliated with Cambridge, but he was actually lecturing at that time in UCD in Ireland. And he was Israeli, he wasn't English at all, you know. So that's another thing altogether. But so I was kind of going, you know, this is hilarious. But his idea of this 800 years of oppression, that's what they wrote. So that's what brought me back to this sort of period in the 12th and 13th century. Because I was saying, well, where does that begin? That idea of 800 years of oppression. And when you say, you know, unfortunately, and you know this as well as I do, Irish history is, I think, held back with that dichotomy of English versus Irish, Irish versus British, or whatever way you want to define it. And it makes it too base and it takes the complexity out of it.
Polarised.
And it's polarising. And when you think about the people, the adventurers, invaders, whatever you want to call them, who came to Ireland in 1167, 69, I mean, there was Flemish, there was Welsh, there was English, if you want to call them English. Some of them were mixed parentage. You have a mother who was, you know, English or native English, or Anglo-Saxon, whatever you want to call them, and then Norman. And so how do you actually define them? But they're all lumped in, and they're English. The English invasion of Ireland. But they're not all English. So it's look, it's complex, and that's why I think some people go, oh, academics. There's never a straight answer with academics because it's all about complexity. But the beauty, I think, for me about education and coming to third level, coming somewhere like Trinity, is to be comfortable with the fact that it's really about asking the questions.
Yes.
It's not about the answers. There shouldn't really be easy answers to anything, you know what I mean? But
No, it's the awkward questions and getting people to think critically and to challenge assumptions. But I think our history is so core to our identity, especially here in Ireland, that you can also then touch some raw nerves, and that's part of the challenge of how we talk about it and communicate it. And so that's an essential history journey. But in terms of the people who have influenced you on that journey, Daryl, we've heard a lot about your family, especially obviously your grandparents. But there's an amazing Dominican nun who's part of this story, Ethna, who obviously I've had the privilege of meeting. She came in, you were a fellow here in the Hub a few years ago when you were doing your coffee morning, and she came in, you know, but she's been a very, I suppose, important and special person for you. So tell us about Ethna and how that relationship grew.
Yeah, Ethel Swan, Dr. Ethel Swan is a Dominican nun, as has been said. And I met Ethna when I was in my undergraduate years in UCD, and I was working at the same time. I started a part-time job over in Debenhams, over in Henry Street. And Ethna would come in, and I knew she was a nun, and we used to make small talk when she was there. And then I spotted her out in Newman, in the Newman building out in UCD's campus. And I said, oh, I wonder what Ethna's doing out there, you know. And I said, oh, maybe she lives locally, because at that time UCD is such a broad and expansive campus that you would have had people coming in from the outdoor, getting their few bits, walking the dog, getting their bread, buying their milk, buying their newspaper, whatever. And I kind of assumed the same for Ethna. So next time I saw her in Devon, I said, oh, don't mind me asking, I spotted you in UCD in the Newman building. I said, do you live locally? She said, well, I do live locally. She said, well, I'm a retired faculty member from the Faculty of Psychology. And I said, oh, and I said, oh, I said that I did take on my elective modules in psychology. I'm very interested in psychology. And she said, oh, she said, well, if you ever want to meet sometime or have a chat. And I took her up on it, you know. So Ethna's been an amazing, I suppose, friend and mentor. And I mean, what a grammarian and an old school red biro. I mean, if you wanted somebody to proofread your work, Ethna, I mean, she said to me, look, if you want me to read your undergrad essays, I will. And she probably regrets that now, but she was getting God knows what things, essays on the Crusades, to ideas and aspects of androgyny in The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. I mean, she was getting the works, and it just struck me, I mean, as a Dominican nun, I mean, I even say, for example, I had in my mind, oh, well, I sent her the essay on androgyny and sexuality and all sorts of, I wonder how she'd react.
Yeah.
You know, and no qualms about it. I mean, water off a duck's back. And I was just coming, I was saying, oh my God, this is amazing. And I think, and that's a kind of a broader, I suppose, topic in Irish society now, is more attitudes towards the members of the clergy. I think it's problematic, obviously, you know, there's a lot of issues there. But I think especially people in my generation, there's an anti-clerical view or prejudice, which I think is completely misguided and misfounded. There's understandable upset and anger with the Catholic Church, but I mean, some of the institutions in Irish history and society, I mean, where would we be without them? Healthcare, education. I mean, Ethna, a close friend of yours, Margaret McCurtain,
absolutely,
absolute stalwart
Dominican
and stalwart in Irish, not only Irish history but women's.
She's
a pioneer.
Yeah,
you know?
one of Ireland's leading feminists.
You know?
Absolutely.
And the Dominicans especially, by the way, I mean, we're an incredible organisation, because I mean, you look at Dominican schools in general, I mean, where you would have had that segregation and, you know, oh, girls do home economics, the boys do engineering. Dominicans were teaching young girls, young students about business, about being entrepreneurs. They were teaching them language. I mean, it was incredible when you think about
absolute
it.
Pioneers.
Pioneers, they're an incredible organisation. And Ethna was the same, and I just couldn't believe that. And she's just been an amazing pal, and we still keep in touch. I mean, she is, not to say, it's not about her age, but I mean, she won't mind me saying she's a young 95, if anything. But I mean, she's a living relic. I mean, she's amazing. The stuff she has, she has lived through. She was there in 32 for the Eucharistic Congress. I mean, her stories about remembering that, I think she was 5 or 6 years old. And she remembered, came up for Meath with her mother and father and a couple of her siblings. And it was such a hot, sweltering day, right? And I couldn't remember, because I had a comparable experience when, now, it wasn't as a religious or a spiritual affair. I went on the mitch from school and I went to see Barack Obama on College Green, and it was a sweltering day, and I was saying, God, there's no water, you couldn't bring in anything with you. You were lucky to bring the socks and shoes and your feet. All the FBI and secret agents were patting everyone down. So there was water being handed out in plastic bottles to everyone in the crowd and whatever else. But in her case, everyone was sweltering. What do you do? Because there's obviously no plastic bottles. There's no bottles of water down in the local spar in 1932. They had Boy Scouts with barrels of buttermilk, pouring them into people's cupped hands. And they're sucking the buttermilk on a hot day. Now, it's a bit like in that movie Anchorman, and he's drinking the carton of milk in the phone box. He's going, milk was a bad choice. You know, imagine getting that. Like, it's just incredible. Like, and then she was there. She was wedded with the Air Force, the Luftwaffe, and the Spitfires were at each other over the North Wall bombing.
Was she?
Yeah, she was there. She was on Eccles Street. She teaches, and she remembers that, and she remembers seeing the two planes flying at each other, going after one another. like incredible
So
stories.
listen, once you've finished the oral history of your own family, you need to record Ethna and her stories, because, I mean, that's absolutely amazing. And I know for our Near FM listeners that Ethna has a lot of things to say about you too, Daryl, but I think that, you know, the friendship has been so rewarding.
Absolutely.
And the reciprocity has been tremendous.
That's, I mean, just in general, I think the important thing is that idea of, I mean, age, maybe it's because I spent so much time with my grandparents. Age was never it's never been a defining factor in relationships for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll go out at a point with somebody who's in their 80s, I mean, no problem. And I'll go out with somebody my own age, but it doesn't matter to me, because it's the stories, it's having a genuine interest in people, I suppose, and hearing people's stories, and you learn so much. And that's the important thing, never hold back, always have the conversation with people, and of all walks of life, because then you have a better sense of the goings on in the world, you know. And as a historian, you have to have a good sense of everything, you know, whether it's economics, politics, and
Absolutely.
you have to read widely. Well, why not have a conversation with Annie, Jane or John Doe that goes by? You know what I mean? So,
Absolutely, Daryl. But I think mentorship is important, and I think we all need you mentioned Margaret McCurtain, obviously. You know, I think you know, she made a huge difference to me at a critical moment in my life, and clearly Ethna has done the same for you. So before we hand over to our audience, I just have a sort of want to just take a step back and reflect a little bit on the opportunities that you feel your education, especially I suppose your university education, has afforded you. I don't know if you have any sort of general sort of reflections there.
yeah, I mean, I've had so many great opportunities. I mean, when I was finishing my undergrad, I applied and got the scholarship to go up to Israel. So I finished my undergraduate studies in Israel. So I spent 6 months over there. Which was,
Where in Israel?
in Beersheba.
Wonderful.
In Ben Gurion University of the Negev. So I spent 6 months there, which was completely different experience. You know,
Right.
It's
In
very
what
different.
ways? Just unpack that
Well,
a
I
little
mean,
bit.
do you know what? Actually, it was quite interesting, because you take for granted coming from Ireland, and you know, certainly down south, the Republic, being a Catholic, you're in the majority, say, right? So you grow up with that sense, and being in Israel, obviously being non-Jewish, and living there day to day, very different experience. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, the sad thing was for me, because I mean, obviously there's Irish people have a certain perception of, say, Israel and what's going on the ground over there. So it was interesting for me. I still wanted to go over and see what life was like in Israel. Do you know what I mean? On a day-to-day basis. I mean, I met so many incredible people in Israel who, you know, want a two-state solution. They have an incredible sense of, you know, breaking bread rather, and engaging with people. But I mean, the sad thing is, like, for so many, and I have so many great relationships, even still today, with many Israeli friends. Their sense was, you know, well, why do people outside of Israel, you know, is there a sense that they don't like us, or they don't, why they couldn't understand why, as a non-Jew, I go to Israel. They're like, do you not hate us? Do you not, like, you know, and that was, I mean, an incredible experience for me, you know, and I had so many opportunities, and that Israel held a special place in my heart, because it really kind of challenged me and my own perceptions about places and about conflict and about, you know, seeing issues from both sides.
Yeah.
You know, both sides of the border, and I think that's very important. That, you know, something actually that always struck me, one thing that always stands to me and stands with me from my education in secondary school, was a quote from Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. And it's, you never really know a man until you stand in his shoes and walk around him. And it's very true, you know.
Absolutely.
And that always struck me in anything I did, was try and, you know, put the shoes on and see, try and think from another person. So I do give people, you know, benefit of doubt.
Yeah.
Be kind. You don't know what's going on. You know, we talk about this. You don't know what's going on in people's lives. So give people the benefit of doubt. And look, it might be uncomfortable for you, but throw yourself in. Sure.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed, you're all the better for it.
No, absolutely. But what's lovely is to see the way that your experiences of education, of literature, of history have really then, you know, shaped your life in a very profound way, but also the importance of travel and of experiencing, obviously, different systems. And presumably your message to anybody who's listening is, if you get an opportunity to spend a year abroad or 6 months abroad or even a shorter time,
you can go.
go,
absolutely.
and I can support that.
But even in a microcosmic level, going from, you know, say, having the opportunity to study in Israel, or in UCD rather, and coming to Trinity, or vice versa, go to another institution, or, you know, if you
I remember
you don't be too comfortable.
Well, we went up to Clandeboy, and it was very interesting. So every year we took a group of students from the history department and the English department up for a reading party, a 3-day engagement with the Bangor Literary Festival, really. But for some students, it was the first time they'd crossed the border into Northern Ireland. They'd never been to Belfast before. And for me, that made it really important, because obviously your whole perspective can change by those sorts of opportunities, even on the islands. So
it's important to just challenge your preconceptions, and we all have them, you know, and put yourself in a comfortable situation. And you know, like Ian Robertson here, a local here, this part, and he's done so in stressful situations, good. So putting yourself into kind of those, and I've always been sort of one to say, oh, I'm very nervous about this, and I'll be overthinking something. I go, oh, no, I don't know what to do it, but you know, if you try yourself in an hour's time, it'll be over. Not a bit like this. I was dreading this, going, but you know, when you're in it, it's grand.
Yeah, well, and just a final question for me is really, when you think about, you reflect back on your education, Daryl, if there was one thing that has made a difference to you, what would that be?
Talking to people.
Really?
Yeah. Just having conversations with people. You know what I mean? And that for me, I think, is so important. And being genuine, I think, and being kind. I mean, my father was an incredible. He's a social animal. I mean, he's incredible in social situations. I mean, he worked in retail for a long time, and he was very much set for me when I was young. The day I got my junior cert results, I remember getting on the bus with my mother and coming in and starting my induction in Debenhams when I was 16, and I started, you know, my working part-time then, and kind of being around adults and having conversations with people. It just gives you a sense of like that's what I couldn't understand when my friends finished their degree and went and worked in whatever pharmaceuticals or business or whatever they were working in, and they were going to the canteen and go, God, I can't have a conversation with these people. They're talking about mortgages and they're talking about their kids. How can I talk to them about mortgages and kids? I'm only 21 or something, you know. But for me, that was never an issue. I could talk to anyone about anything, because it's having the conversations, it's understanding their wants, their needs, their desires. And all I could think about was, God, I better get this down. And I know about mortgages when I'm 21, because by the time I need to think about mortgages, I haven't said to what the hell it is, you know, or what they are, you know. So that, I think, in a way, it gives you a leg up, you know, having a conversation, because people tell you learn from experience.
Right.
So you learn from other people's experience before it happens to you. Do you know what I mean? In a way, so you kind of have a leg over in a way already, you know.
So it's a lifelong learning.
But being genuine, I think,
is very important. Yeah,
you know, that's what I remember having that conversation with my father. Being genuine and actually caring about people.
Yeah,
it's not you shouldn't be superficial about it. It's about genuinely caring for people, and because you just don't know what's going on in their lives, and just having that bit of conversation, or even a hello, even walking down the street. You know, it's funny, you know, I wouldn't do it in town, people think I'm a madman, but if I was not walking locally, you know, down the road or going for a walk at lunch or something, you know, hello, good morning, afternoon, people either look at you as if you have 10 heads, or they'll engage with you, but I just think that
a little bit of kindness goes a long way.
You get further with honey than vinegar.
Yeah, sure do. So I don't know if there are any questions from the audience. Please, there's one at the back there.
Daryl, thanks a million for telling your story. I want to ask you about Crumlin, actually. You know, Crumlin is a very distinguished and famous place in Dublin.
Absolutely.
We have obviously Phil in it, and it's a birthplace of many free thinkers and creative people. And how did Crumlin shape you? And tell me about the characters of Crumlin that probably you would engage with daily. How did that shape your education and how you approach? You know, you talk a lot about having conversations and stories. Your mindset towards being social and being a man from Dublin.
Yeah, great question. I mean, I love being from Crumlin, and you know, seriously, my girlfriend always slags me about that. People from Crumlin, people from Trinity have one major thing in common. I always remember Terry Neal, great friend, going to Trinity, saying to me, you know, it's that idea that how do you know someone goes to Trinity? They'll tell you. And Crumlin is the same. If you're from Crumlin, how do you know someone's from Crumlin? They'll tell you. You know, so that's one thing that certainly people from Trinity and Crumlin have in common. I mean, as you say, I mean, so many great free thinkers, talented minds and men and women came from Trinity, and people like you think Fintan O'Toole is one that people don't readily think about. Fintan O'Toole grew up around the corner from me, not far from me, you know, and he talks about even the stigma that actually once was associated with Crumlin, especially in the 80s for jobs, and you know, wrote an article, I think probably 2 years ago now, about that. Him, when he was writing up applications for jobs on CV, he wouldn't put his address down as Crumlin because he was afraid he wouldn't get a call back or he wouldn't be contacted us. But I mean, I had great wearing in Crumlin growing up and playing football in the fields and everything else. But yeah, it's I mean, like those experiences say, it always struck me then to say, depending on where you're from, and I suppose class is an interesting thing. It's something that I think in Irish society we don't talk about. It's a bit of a taboo subject. I know there was a great conversation held here. I think you can get a playback here when we did Trinity and the Changing City. I think the last one was on that sort of taboo of class, which, I mean, I always say it wouldn't it be a mad experiment in a way, and a cruel maybe, just to say to somebody, what class do you identify with? You know, because people, I'm very proud of being from Crumlin in terms of my identity. I love being from Crumlin. I love going to the local pub, you know, going to the local booths or having a pint, going out with my family and whatever else. But, I mean, Sarah says, yeah, you're middle class, so you don't come across as if you're from Crumlin, you know. And it's interesting because you internalise it. I mean, I'm Crumlin true and true, but for somebody else, I'm like, oh, you don't seem like you don't have the trappings, or the usual trappings of being. And then what does that mean? It's like identity. What does it mean from being from a certain area, or being a member of a certain identity, or a nation, or religion, etc., etc. But I mean, I always remember two cases, and it's funny, and it always struck me. One was I was at a house party, I won't say where, but in a very affluent part years ago, when I was in secondary school, and this young woman said to me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Crumlin." She said, "No, you couldn't be from Crumlin. If you're from Crumlin, you'd be in an Adidas tracksuit here at this, right?" And I said, "You cheeky owl, I won't say." But anyway, but then another time I was out, I won't say where, Coppers. I was in Copperface Jacks one night, and I was outside with a friend, and the friend was having a smoke, and the fella said to him, "Can I have a light or something?" And he said, "Oh, where are you from, lads?" You know, and both of us said we're from Crumlin. You know, a mate of mine, he was saying we both went to UCD together, both from Crumlin. He said, "No, you aren't." I said, "Yeah, we are." And he said, "Where are you from?" And he said where he was from. The three of us all from Crumlin. We'd known each other all our lives. But it was interesting because even your man from Crumlin didn't think we were from Crumlin, you know what I mean? So it's a sense of displacement in a way. But I mean, yeah, I'd be cognizant of that sort of idea of where you're from, how do you fit in a way. But I mean, I never consciously tried to fit in a way. You know what I mean? You just kind of go about your business and you're just decent with people. Yeah. I mean, the one thing, it was a book I read recently, and I encourage people to read it. It's, I suppose, for resilience and all sorts of stuff. But a guy called Ray Goggins, who was a member of the Army Ranger Wing, the elite Army Ranger Wing in the Irish Army, and he talks about this idea that, you know, a real judge of a character is somebody who, you know, they engage with people and they don't judge people and what they can do for them. You know, they're not in a relationship with people, or they don't talk to people because they'll get something out of it. Yeah. They're just engaging with people, you know. So that's, I suppose, the way I've always kind of approached my interactions with people. So. Yeah.
We're starting to run out of time, Darryl, but there's one question that's come in via Facebook that I think we're going to take.
So this is coming from Premish Lalo. So meeting Darryl was the highlight of my time at the Hub. I will never forget his generosity and his passion for ideas, and not to mention his ability to dance. Please ask Darryl how the Trinity Longroom Hub enabled his journey and whether it altered his views about education.
Great question.
Great question, Premish in South Africa. Lovely. I was going to say, if you can see us, great that you're joining us.
Great question. I mean, the Hub is, I mean, you're director here for 5-6 years, and I mean, it's just an incredible space because there's that diversity, great, amazing voices, backgrounds. I mean, it's, I suppose, disciplinary in terms of discipline. I mean, everyone is represented, and having those conversations are just incredible. I mean, disciplines aside, I mean, the nationalities here, where people are coming from, the research fellows who come from overseas, Pramesh, I mean, what an experience to meet Pramesh. I mean, what a privilege. Has incredible experiences of his own. And it's, in a way, you're trying to think about those networks, those social networks ones are involved in, and those connections that can be made. Like I had another conversation with an academic over in Georgetown, Colleen Parsons, who I know he knows very well. But myself and Colleen were having a conversation. He was telling me about research he was interested in. I said, "Oh, really?" And how I got to know Colleen was because I met Leo Lefebvre, who was a fellow here, and you know, a Jesuit. I had a great conversation with Leo. Leo introduced me to Colleen, and then I said, "Oh, Colleen, you're working on this aspect of whatever it was." Actually, a friend of mine and a former researcher, Premish Lalu, is working on something similar, and I put them into it. So it's just these incredible in many ways it's about kind of having the foresight to open doors for people. And I'd be very conscious of that sort of looking after one's own, like that. Great, I love my Stoic philosophy. And Marcus Aurelius, one of the meditations is, and I think it's always in the back of my mind, and how I kind of think about things is always have an intuitive concern for the interests of one's friends. And I'd be very like that. I'd be, it's about opening doors for people.
Yeah.
Whether they go through it and progress through
That's
is another
up to
thing,
them.
but it's opening the doors and making those connections with the hub. I mean, what a place.
Well, it's great to hear you say that as a former, I was going to say, fellow here, and that it made a difference to you, and
Yeah,
that's really good for us. And Eve Patton, the current director, I'm sure Eve
You're
loves to
doing
hear
great
it
work.
as well. To keep it, I mean, it is an amazing.
Ah,
It's a phenomenal resource, and it's wonderful. I think we're sort of coming to an end, Darryl, but the final question is actually a very quick one. What does the future hold? Where do you go from here?
God, who knows? I mean, I'm finishing up the PhD now. I mean, I'd love to flesh out a career in academia. If I
You
can,
would.
But obviously it's a very precarious area now at the moment, trying to get jobs. I mean, there's so many incredibly talented PhDs, but I would like to get involved in academia and lecture, hopefully in the future.
Well-
Teaching in some form.
Well, do you know, I think education, it's in your
Yeah.
It's absolutely in your DNA. You've got to grow for it, and wherever you go, you'll take that passion for history, for education with you. And you know, whether the students are second or third level, whoever gets to sit at your feet is going to be extremely lucky. It's been just the most incredible conversation today, and obviously, you know, thank you enormously for taking the time to join us. And also thank you to Near FM for making this series happen. I mean, there have been amazing talks. And again, thanks to colleagues in the Trinity Long Room Hub, without whom, I was going to say Aoife King and Francesco Rafferty, but also Eve Patton, Katrina Curtis, the whole team are just awesome. And so thank you very much. And thank you everybody who's listening. Hopefully you've enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. So thank you very much, Darryl.
Thank you.